Life Happens is the podcast that helps you build mental fitness, brought to you by 87%. I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and the marketing director of 87%. And in this series, I speak to inspirational people to get their take on life's ups and downs, how they've overcome setbacks, and what it means to them to be mentally fit. Now, I'm very, very excited about introducing this week's guest because of his standing within the mental health community. He's a prominent mindset coach, a writer, a public speaker, and a vocal campaigner for the need to change the stigma about mental health. Yet he says he wasn't always this way, and his personal journey of overcoming the need to conform and the need for acceptance, as well as feelings of emptiness, we'll come on to, is a fascinating one. I'm very much looking forward to getting into it. All of that and more with Ben Bidwell, also known as the Naked Professor. Ben, welcome to Life Happens.
Thank you very much for a brilliant intro. I'm just sitting and smiling, listening. Thank you.
I aim to please, my friend.
Good job. Good job.
We are a mental fitness platform, as you know, and I always ask the same question to our guests first. How are you?
Biggest question of all, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just going to take a second, actually, if you don't mind, because for me, I do need to feel into this. Like we kind of discussed off air, the easy thing is to go, yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you? And you go, yeah, I'm good, thanks. And then we move on. It's like, actually, I'd like to just take a second. And how do I really feel? In this very moment, I feel just very present and alive. This is what I love to do. And it's great to reconnect with you and just sit in this space and let this conversation unfold. Half an hour ago, there was probably a bit of frustration that I hadn't got on with my day as much as I'd like to. And kind of this weight I feel in London, a lot of just constant need to do. And, you know, I've really felt that over the last 18 months. It's been quite a common thing for me in lockdown and kind of never leaving my office, which is my home as well. It's like always this heavy sense of I need to be doing more, working for myself. So that's never sort of too far away and something I'm trying to manage. But in this moment, I feel just very present and very happy to be sat in the space with you. How are you?
I'm extremely well as well. Thank you. Yes, for asking. You're the first guest to push that back to me, actually. So that's very kind of you. Also, just really looking forward to the next hour or so to opening up and having an honest conversation about all of this incredibly important stuff, mental fitness. More generally, I'm getting married in a week's time, so yeah, very much looking forward to that. I count myself very lucky throughout lockdown. It's obviously been some ups and downs and some tough times, but generally, obviously, positive in terms of how things have progressed in a relationship. So very good. Thank you very much for
happy days.
Asking.
Happy days.
I teed up a little bit about what you do. Perhaps you could tell the listeners a little bit more about that work.
Try and let this flow, and I'm going to fall in line with what you said a minute ago, because you said we're going to have a very honest, open conversation. And for me, I guess that is at the absolute core of what I do. It's trying to provide the space and take people on a journey of true, like, deep introspection to learn who they really are, and also allow themselves to be who they really are. A question that often comes to me is, or I feel like I need to ask people, is like to differentiate between who they learn to be, the person they learn to be, and the person that they really are, and understanding and appreciating that the two are often very different unless we've done the inner work to truly understand ourselves. And that for me is the journey to freedom, really understanding yourself and then finding the bravery and strength to be able to actually be who you really are and not fall into society's perceptions and conditioning of who you should be. And that, I guess, is at the crux of what I do, and that shows up in the form, I guess, as a head title as a coach, but I speak about this in public speaking forums, and then I run online communities around it, and just really try and provide space for people to go on this journey. As a man, I guess I'm drawn to that men's work because I've been on that journey and I know the conditioning that us men receive and how it takes us away from our truth. But really, this is work for everyone, for men and women. It doesn't matter. I'm just more familiar with the masculine path, I guess.
And I want to pick up on what you've just said, that process of learning who you are, because that's something that you went through. And if I can sort of wind the clock back a little bit, you've said, and actually on your website it says you once lived uninspired, which is a lovely phrase. But I wonder if you could explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so uninspired. There was just this emptiness. There's this feeling that is this all that life is? And that was particularly takes me back to sitting in an office when I was probably about 25 or something like that. And I remember on Friday afternoons we had a great team and some really great friends that I made in that space. And it was a good job. I was really lucky not to take anything away from it. But I remember always just having this itch, and we'd sit around on the Friday afternoon, sort of a bit more freely chatting, and I'd be like, there's something inside of me. There's something inside of me, and I want to explore it. And we used to talk about friends who were creating this and doing that stuff. And for me, that was just, I think I had so much untapped creativity that I'd suppressed inside of me, that I really wanted to allow myself to fully step out of the boredom, the box that I created, that of being who I should be and ticking all these boxes that society said I should do, and actually get out there and truly express myself and live as Ben, not who I thought I should be. So a process of unticking the boxes, well, not unticking the boxes, but ticking my own boxes, not ticking everyone else's, being who I was really born here to be, and show up and express that. And I think if we don't do that, there's an element of repression inside of us. There's an energy inside of us that we can feel. It's like an itch, a scratch. It's like, for me, an emptiness, a dis-ease. Like there's something we're not fully there, and we live with that energy. And I guess that was a big part of my motivation to show up and do what I do now, because I do feel like I'm showing up now. I do feel like I'm scratching that itch. Not to say life's perfect, but I'm certainly, in that space. That's for sure.
And you use the word society. That I picked up on that in particular, and I think the power of society in terms of pushing us in a path that I mentioned, conformity in my introduction, that need to impress people's expectations, peer pressure even. Is there too much of an expectation imposed on us by society?
Yeah, but I also think it's natural. It's just we have to find the strength ourselves to go beyond it. For me, like we are wired to find connection and to fit in, to find conformity, to be part of a tribe. There's safety in a tribe, and we're geared to stay safe. Naturally, it's deeply ingrained in us. But it's just that really, when we step back and look at the world that we live in now, does that really serve us? Does conforming with this presentation of life really fit us? And we are all unique. We do all have different qualities and different levels of creativity and expression and inside of us, that perhaps the most sort of rational path, the path of conformity, doesn't allow or doesn't show us the way to express all of who we are. So for some that works, for some that's great, but for me it didn't. I really didn't feel like that was my calling. That was who I was here to be. I felt like there was a deeper expression of myself, and I think a big part of that fits into the whole masculine journey. And the whole masculine journey is very much, I remember from the age of 5, or as early as I can remember, thinking or showing or being seen or seeing that we are here to work hard, get our good grades, get a good job, earn money, meet a wife, have kids, live in the house, get the car. And if I do that, then bingo, I smash life. That is the ultimate. Like that was what I saw from that age. And I've realized that each day I get older that's not my calling. It is in some capacity, but deeper than that, it's to show up and express myself and live truly and authentically as me, and let myself be seen and feel that the sense of connection that comes from that. And that was a big calling for me. So all the time I wasn't connected to that. All the times I was following society's path of just getting the good job and earning the money, I was missing out a whole part of who I was. And there's a pain to that, I think.
It comes down to perception, doesn't it? And this ideology of success. But there's that famous adage that success without happiness is failure. And it's ingrained into us that this is if you drive a fast car and have a big house and are married with kids, you are successful. But there's a lot of people out there who are in that situation and unhappy because they haven't found their purpose. And I suppose you also touched on that, the notion of masculinity. Again, it's a perception thing. You're a big guy. What are you, 6'6"?
Yeah.
Healthy, devilishly handsome, if I may say so. And I, sort of succumbed to that alpha male stereotype myself many years ago. And again, it didn't, trying to be someone that I didn't make me happy.
No, it's a common thing, isn't it, for us men, I think, and this is the beautiful thing, is that I love sitting in spaces like this with men like you, because there is a sense of just being and stripping away, and like this truth that can come through is that we've both lived that life of trying to be that and conform in certain ways and got the stories to go by, but actually we're sitting in a different, unique space where we're talking from a slightly different place, we're talking from a deeper truth and honesty of who we really are. And that sets my heart and soul on fire. That's what I was born. For me, that was my deepest value, if you like. I do believe, I really do believe, having done the work with men that I've done, and we know a mutual friend of ours, Michael Maisie, having sat in space with him and knowing his journey and seeing men like him, us men, we put on an armor. We become warriors that society has shown in the best way that we can, and we miss out a big chunk of who we truly are as a human being, which is also that as a human being we are creative, we are emotional, we are kind, sensitive, loving beings as well. But this perception of being a warrior, of being strong, of doing and making stuff happen, we don't manage to integrate that with the more open, sort of softer side of us as well. And we think we've got to go all in on that masculine. It's like, if I'm a tough guy, I will always be a tough guy and you'll never see a chink of weakness in me. And we don't understand this reality that we can be tough and we can also be soft, and we can just allow ourselves to be different in different moments. When we walk onto that rugby pitch like the South Sea Islanders, we can be strong and we can put hits in and we can be determined and brave and make stuff happen, and we can walk off the pitch and hug each other and tell each other we love each other and we're proud to be on the same team, and be vulnerable and soft and gentle, and we're capable of that. We just find it very hard.
It's all ends of the spectrum, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with, as you say, there's nothing wrong with being a big macho man for 80 minutes on a rugby pitch, as an example, but then also having the ability to express emotions, tell your best friend, your mother, whoever it might be, that you love them. This is not a bad thing.
No, it's being all of who you can be.
Absolutely. And speaking of being all you can be, you mentioned this lack of creativity in this job and sort of inability to make stuff happen. Was there a particular moment for you, a particular sort of spark of realization where it hit you that this isn't me, I need to be doing something different?
There was actually, but probably not what you'd expect, and this is why I know it's so hard for so many. But it came for me in the crash of between 2008 2010, and by 2010, we'd suffered as a business and my salary had halved, and I was 28 at that point and thinking, or 29, thinking, is this what I was born to do? And it was easier to walk away at that point because my salary was half. So I was like, screw it, like let's go and see what I'm walking out from half a paycheck, so now feels like a good time. So, and if that didn't happen, honestly, like maybe that things kept growing, my paycheck was getting more and more and more, and I was going on nicer holidays, maybe I would have found it harder to get off the treadmill. But that moment brought me the opportunity to take a step back, and from there I've never looked back. The journey that was when my journey started, really. Because at that point I then started working with a coach myself, and like learning who I really was, who I really am, and the journey that I'm meant to go on. So yeah, it came out of fortune. It came out of challenge, of difficulty at that time. It was hard.
So I was going to say, perhaps actually the credit crunch in a way was a blessing.
Dream. Just like I hope COVID may have been for a lot of people. We might be, coming out of it now, and we might have created new opportunities for ourselves through the challenge. I hope, maybe.
So you started along this path to 2010 time, correct?
Yeah.
But you've talked about burnout as well during your career. Was it a similar time, or did that come later?
I think I was just in a constant state, really. Like, it wasn't necessarily a career, but I think it was just life choices, in terms of, like, I was in my head. What I mean by that is I was constantly thinking, doing, like, working everything out. Who should I be? What do I need to do? How can I make myself happy? Working everything out. And I was always tired. I just believed I was someone who needed 9 hours sleep. And even when I got that, I still felt so tired, because I've just always churning away, working everything out in my head. And even the things that I enjoyed, I was like working them out. I was never truly present, just being there, no thoughts, just in flow. And so for me, like, I never actually experienced sort of proper burnout where I was like, I can't get out of bed, but I just felt constantly drained, constantly tired. Now I honestly, like, my body seems to sort of, when I have often between 6-7 hours sleep, my body's like, ding, bing, okay, up we get. And I'm like, oh, I'd be quite nice to have a bit more sleep. My body's like, no, you ready? Like, let's go. And I still have tired moments. I still am tired at times, but it's entirely different. Like, and for me, this is the difference between like force and flow. And I was living in force and hustle and trying and doing all the time before. And now I'm trying to constantly choose a state of flow and being, and just allowing, surrendering.
It's Michael you mentioned. Actually, he was an early guest on this podcast. I spoke to him. It's a lovely phrase he uses, the difference between being a human doing and a human being. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And I love that. It's that this constant, need to just do and always be at 100%. And actually, my last guest, a phenomenal lady called Rachel, who works for the NHS, who did a TED talk. She picked up on this 100% idea, whereby we can't always be at 100%. Even on a bad day, if you're at 30%, but you still give your all, that is the equivalent of giving 100%. No one can ask more of you. So this lovely phrase, being, idea of being a human being rather than a human doing is a very important thing for us to perhaps take on board more.
Society teaches us to be human doings, doesn't it? That's who what people. Sometimes if I have a weekend by myself, I do some journaling, I do some writing, I use music, I sit and I become introspective in myself, and I look at where I'm trying to go or what I'm trying to do. And someone says, Ben, how was your weekend? What did you get up to? And I'd kind of say, oh yeah, I just spent it by myself doing some kind of introspective work. People would be like, are you all right? Perceived really negatively, it's not a good thing. Whereas if I said, I went to a party Friday, caught up with some friends here, got up really early, went to the gym, and then I met some friends for lunch, then I caught up with my friends over there and we went for a run in the park and did that, and then our friends over in the evening, and then we went out to the theatre later on. They'd be like, brilliant, well, that's amazing, well, God, sounds like a brilliant weekend. Or automatically a similar level. Right?
It sounds very tiring.
It does sound tiring, doesn't it? But also, like, at a very simple level, I still hear it all the time. People go, how are you? And sometimes I go, I'm feeling really busy at the moment. They go, oh, that's great. Automatically they think it's just good, because naturally I think we think busy money maybe, but I'm like, no, I don't want to be busy. Like, I want to be like, I want to be in flow. I don't want, busy is not a good thing for me, but it's a badge of honor in society.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned journaling. Tell me about the sort of the importance of of that for you? I mean, again, not a stereotypically masculine thing to do, but
What are you
that
trying to say,
idea of
James?
we're within the app, which we'll mention, we're very much we're into, that's a terrible phrase. We very much promote the idea of self-reflection and self-awareness as a means of better understanding our emotions and who we are and how we feel, and that leads to improved focus and performance and more fulfillment, more happiness. Tell me about your experiences and the reasons behind you journaling.
Yeah, well, at a simple level, what I discover is that when I put pen to paper, or to be honest, I mean, this is probably cheating and probably not good, but mind you, it probably fits in with your app. I usually use the notes on my phone. And when I do that, and I just sort of give myself space to say, let's just do this, let's just write. Then what comes out is learnings and lessons, and I didn't know it was there until I gave myself the space to actually do it. So for me, it's always like a learning lesson. It's like, and I used to do it every Friday. I used to do it partly for me, but partly because trying to, just keep up on Instagram, was every Friday I would check in and I'd write and I'd share. And that was my own journaling practice, where I'd just write what I was feeling. And often, like, come Friday, I'd be like, shit, I don't really know what I'm feeling. I don't really know what have I had. I haven't had too many feelings this week or now. What do I do? And then I stop and I start to write down. And then it's like, oh, wow, yeah, this is it. Like, and I never would have got there unless I actually allowed the space and put pen to paper or finger to phone or whatever. And so it's like our mutual friend Joel Burgess talks a lot about forcing functions. It's like creating an environment where you make yourself do something. And when we choose to put pen to paper or finger to phone to write, then stuff comes up and we learn about ourselves. That we don't realize. We don't know what we don't know, and until we put ourselves in the place, we don't know what comes up.
It's very interesting you touching on this subject. I mean, a little promotional plug for the app, but this is we have a daily reflection, a daily exercise that takes 3 minutes, and it is just that the whole point of it is to encourage that self-reflection and build self-awareness, which, as I mentioned a moment, it just gets you thinking about thinking and understanding how your feelings are affecting your life and your performance, and being better able. It all comes back to building mental fitness, being able to manage the ups and downs, take more from the positives, and better deal with the negatives, with the setbacks. So I love your take on that.
Likewise.
Coming back to the burnout, was there a way that you transitioned out of that?
Yeah, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be an answer that people want. It'd be great if I could say, the practical aspect of I changed my diet, I cut out Coke or caffeine or whatever, or things like this. But for me, fundamentally, it was reconnecting to my truth and allowing myself to flow. Not having to work everything out. Practicing gratitude to surrender into moments of presence. It was all this kind of stuff that meant I wasn't so in my head when I was all day trying to work everything out. I was letting go of that and actually just feeling into the presence of what felt right in that moment. And that's a much lighter way of being. It's much easier. I think, like all of us experience it, particularly like the London energy, it's all about da 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 da. And for me, the practice, as I say, is like much more now just about being and allowing flow, and sometimes getting it wrong, and sometimes not working things out, and allowing all of that, because that's the human experience that I want to have. I want to live in flow, ultimately, is my choice, rather than protecting myself by working everything out and living in my head and feeling tired and exhausted as a result. So surrendering, not a masculine word, but surrendering into the energy of our heart.
That's beautiful. You said that wouldn't be the answer that I was looking for. Actually, that's wonderful. It does. It might be a slight tangent, but it does lead me on into this idea of, and we could probably devote an entire other podcast to pursuit of dreams and success, and but then the need to prioritize and find balance? Because there will be loads of people out there who are working to achieve something. Maybe they've launched a podcast, maybe they've set up a business, maybe they're striving for a promotion, etc. So how do we know if we're pushing too hard?
Yeah, it's look, firstly, tune into our bodies, I think, is there, and there'll be people way better placed to talk about this than me in terms of, burnout specialists, but, listening to your body, and not kind of feeding it with supplements to fight the tiredness, but respecting ourselves, like treating our body as something that we love, as a vessel that, needs to be fueled correctly, and it has to be fueled through food and sleep and nutrition and exercise, and connecting it with it in that sense, going deeper than instant gratification, and listening to it. So it's providing feedback. So if there are aches, pains, feelings, anxieties, tiredness, can we listen to that and work with it and try and play the game with it so that we are in alignment with it? Sometimes we have to say to our body, I'm really sorry, but it's going to be a tiring week. We've got to push through this because we've got stuff to do, but we're going to really try and relax after. And we're in this together, team, let's do this. But yeah, I don't know about the specific symptoms of burnout that people would experience, and it would be wrong for me to try and pretend, but I hear people talking about just that struggle to get out of bed, and lack of clarity and peace of mind, and, anxieties and these kind of things. But yeah, listening to the feedback mechanisms that are inside of our bodies, and realizing that they're there to help us and guide us, not to be dismissed or numbed.
Sure. And you launched your blog in 2017?
I did, yeah. Good knowledge.
The Naked Professor.
Yes, indeed.
How did that? Firstly, there's a question that you probably get asked a lot, which we'll come on to. But how did that help you?
God, it helped me in so many ways. It allowed me to be me. It created business opportunities. It led to conversations with book publishers that are ongoing, and it's created beautiful new connections. Like, we probably would never have met if I didn't do this. Like, I was showing up. It was like, it's my authentic path. It was just allowing myself to be me and saying, hey, this is me. Like, let's see what happens from here. It gave me a sense of just beautiful purpose, and yeah, it's been everything to me, really. And well, no, that's not true, but it's been just a beautiful part of my journey in the last few years. Okay. I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest.
That's wonderful. And I mean, here's the question that you probably get asked: why the nakedness?
I don't know, James, because I was an idiot, and now I'm stuck with it. No, it's 2017. It's, it seemed to me that everyone had a catchy Instagram name, and I just joined the bandwagon, and I knew that my message was about kind of emotional vulnerability and openness and sharing from my heart and stripping the masks and bearing my soul and all these kind of cliches, and they always took me back to this kind of basically just being naked, just like, hey, like letting yourself be fully seen, like not hiding away. All these things that I'd done all my life, worn masks, not bared my soul, hidden myself away, pretended to be what I wasn't, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, that's what I'm writing about. And then it's like, okay, but why would anyone care? Because everyone's got something to say on Instagram these days. Like, why would anyone care? And it's like, well, what if I, just have a little hook that might draw them in to read what I'm saying by visually representing what I'm writing about. And so I just pieced it together and professionally got these images that people might go, what the hell is he doing? And then reading about it, and then hopefully going, oh, that's interesting, and then building a connection with them. So it's just a really marketing tool, a branding exercise. But yeah, I got these professional images of me naked in iconic places in London and beautiful scenic places around the world, and back to camera, nothing sort of too,
Nothing too
and sorry.
Nothing too lewd.
I hope not. I hope not. I'm pushing boundaries, I guess. But yeah, and then the naked coach seemed wrong for some reason, and the naked professor seemed playful and catchy, and I've regretted it ever since.
Stop it. No, you haven't.
I can't, no, but it is a bit of a funny one for me. I just want to be Ben, that's all I like. But it's marketing, isn't it? It's a game, and I guess, and then.
But it is also very powerful, and it's very clever what you've done, because there is this concept of bearing all, and it's, that's physically in terms of nakedness and flesh, and but also mentally, and it brings us full circle back to this concept of masculinity, which is possibly changing, but not enough. And I mean, in today's world, there's very little that isn't open for debate and conversation. So why do you think that we're still struggling as men to have these conversations?
The short answer for me is because the ego is a stubborn thing, and we are, and it has to be. It's part of its role, and the ego is the part of us that teaches us who it thinks we should be, and how to conform and fit in and feel integrated, part of a tribe, part of society, and a leader. And yeah, that's been shaping us since, in the informative years from 0 to 7. So we didn't even know, we have no idea why we are how we are, or why our ego tells us to be this way, but because our ego is sitting there and watching and looking at the world and creating conclusions at that point that it will carry through for the rest of our life. And until we realized it, until we started giving ourselves the possibility of changing that. And, and the story, we both grew up in the 80s, and the story was pretty clear around us from what I saw at that point. And that was, Arnie, Sylvester Stallone, Terminator, Rambo, James Bond, unemotional, tough men, strong, brave, courageous, got stuff done. They got the girls, but they didn't ever show them love. They just sort of allowed them in, and then they dispatched them. And, this was kind of that, for me, that was what I saw. That's how I've got to thrive. That's how I've got to thrive. It doesn't matter who I actually am. That's who I need to become. And so now I think it is changing. I do, because I didn't have any role models at that point showing me that I could be emotional, that I could be sad, I could cry, I could tell someone I love them. My dad is an amazing man in many ways, but he grew up in an era, I'm sure probably wasn't too dissimilar for you, and not stereotype, but he struggled with his emotions. It's not natural for him to share love, really. So I didn't see much love being shared, and that was shaping me unconsciously all the way through. And now at least we do see, I always refer back to like The Rock, as alpha in many ways as you possibly could be, physically and mentally in many ways. He is a character, but he also, you see his vulnerability, you see his sensitivity, his kindness, his softness with his kids, with his wife, and talks openly and beautifully. And I hope that there are more of these role models now for these kids growing up, to see that it's possible as a man that you can be that, because I never did. I really didn't. And that's what gives me hope for change.
So change is key. And how do you, what can we do in order to continue that progress, keep the needle moving in the right direction? Perhaps, I don't know, do you have any advice for men who might be uncomfortable opening up, but might be struggling with their emotions and need to do so?
Yeah, firstly, what feels natural to say is removing blame and shame on those men, because it really isn't their fault. They've been shown a way of being that for me is really unhealthy, and I don't blame them. I was on that path too, and it was fortunate that I found a different way, but not everyone has that same level of fortune. So it's like, hey, it's not your fault what you're going through. You're not a bad person. It's not your fault. Your wound is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. So are you brave enough now to say, hey, like perhaps there is more within me. Perhaps there's other aspects of me that could bring me deeper fulfillment in life. Not that that's weakness, but it's growth, it's potential, it's stepping into my best version. Really like creating that narrative, because the story is still at the moment, it's still fixed in some, I'm going to say, uneducated circles, without wanting to sound harsh, but that seeing a therapist or working on your mental health means you've got a problem or there's something wrong with you. And so people avoid it, and I'm okay. For me, like a really simple way of change is you did it at the beginning, just asking people, how are you? But allowing space for people to answer, really. So as guys, when we have a conversation with our friends, when someone says, how are you? I actually always ask for permission. It's like when someone says, how are you? I'm like, what, do you really want to know? And they'll go, yeah, or, whatever. Like,
what am I getting myself into?
Yeah, totally. What are you about to give me? And like then answering honestly, and like honestly is like, I'm amazing. Like I've met an amazing woman who's lighting up my world. I feel great physically. I'm earning money. I feel just really just living very purposefully at the moment. I'm feeling great. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, I'm like, do you know what? I'm struggling right now. It's challenging, and I feel a bit lost as to what's going on, and it's not the happiest time right now. And just answering honestly, starting in that place, and knowing that it's okay, and for the other person to hold the space and be willing to listen and not judge or fix, but just say, hey, like, it's good, whatever you are, we're human beings, let's allow us to be it, and not make it right or wrong or good or bad, but just allow, hey, thank you. And that's a great starting place, I think, for men.
Lovely, really nice. And what about mindfulness? Now, there's a sort of, again, a connotation with that word. I don't know, flowery, is that the right word? Hippie, twee, not manly. What do you say to that? I mean, I'd give you my sort of personal experiences of mindfulness. As you know, I do a lot of running. I don't do it for my physical health. I do it for my mental health. It's an hour to myself to switch off, to work through problems. I call that my mindfulness. I don't meditate, but in a way I do when I'm running, because my mind, I allow myself to switch off from problems, problem solve as well. What's your take on this concept of mindfulness?
Yeah, I could go a number of different directions with it. What I feel right now is, firstly, I think, and a good understanding of it for me is the word is completely wrong in terms of its meaning. It's not mindfulness. It's like empty mind. It's like it's not trying to be in our head and work everything out and focusing on threats and challenges and It's being present right here now and looking around yourself, seeing what's going on, feeling into your emotions, becoming more present and in tune with life, whether it's nature, if you're on the run, like, wow, looking around the trees, feeling the wind, the breath, feeling your body, like, what's going on, where are you at? Becoming more in tune, or doing all the things that we don't do when we're always doing, being, ultimately. So that's not a mindful, that's allowing space to be curious about, actually, like, not making it about us anymore, but just being present to whatever the environment is around us, and whether that's nature or as we're eating something. Mindful eating is, I don't know if you've done the exercise with a raisin, where before often we'll just get a packet of raisins, chuck a load in, chuck them in our mouth, chat our way as we're doing it, swallow it, we don't even know what we've eaten. The opposite exercise, you get one little raisin, you touch it, you feel it, you look at it, you feel the grooves into it, you squeeze it, you take in the texture, you smell it, you breathe it. Wow, okay, like, you really build this relationship with it eventually after a few minutes of processing this. You put it on your tongue, and now, like, this one raisin, you're tasting every bit of it, and you feel it's like entirely different process, and you feel every, like, squelch of a bite of it and the juice coming out, and it's like this tiny little raisin is like so much, and that's mindful eating. And there's one more example that I would give, actually, if you don't mind, because I think this is really powerful and sums the whole thing up, that I love this analogy. And that is, I could put a film on now. You and I sit here, put film on, sort of whatever, want to catch up, and always we'll kind of half watch it, and I go, what's going on in your world, and are you excited to get married, and kind of and films on playing through, and halfway through I'm like, oh, I don't really get this film, like, are you into it? And you're like, no, I don't really know what's going on, to be honest with you. Or it's like, oh, okay, well, we just whatever, keep chatting away, and we get to the end of the film. Oh, I didn't really enjoy that, I probably wouldn't bother watching that one again, actually, it's not really my thing. That's one way that we often consume a film. And another way that we could do it is put the film on and we sit and we invest in the film. We invest, we start learning about the characters, we start feeling into the emotions of what's going on in the story and watching it unfold, and who's going where and what's going to happen here, and and like, we're present with it and we're there watching it fully. And at the end of the film, I'm like, wow, there's some really interesting, fascinating parts to that I just never saw before, that was so interesting. Mm-hmm. And the way I say is that the society, most of us, we go through life half watching our own film. We're not fully present with it. We're not immersed in it. We're not curious about it. We're not investing in it. We're just going through the motions and scoffing down the food and not even knowing what we're eating.
I love that analogy. Absolutely love that analogy. I mean, it's a very simple thing to say, isn't it? But I suppose it's the reason that films are more enjoyable when you go to the cinema, because you actually spend 2 hours focusing on one thing. You're not allowed to get your phone out unless there's some idiot eating popcorn and loudly or whatever it is. Whereas, you're at home, you've got, Instagram, WhatsApp tweets coming up on your phone, and chat, your better half chatting. I love that analogy of focusing more on your own film. That's a beautiful way of describing that.
Yeah, it's the same, just sort of really quickly as well. Same like with the podcast. The reason I love podcasts is because, we sit in a space where it's being recorded. We're present to actually the conversation. I'm not going to start kind of wandering off or thinking of other things or going, sorry, what's that? Sorry, what did you say? Or like, hold on, I just got a call or whatever. Like, it's like, no, we're going to be here. And I love a podcast conversation because two people become very present with one another and we actually go somewhere. So, but how often do we do that in real life? Like, give it that level of, not intensity, but level of curiosity and involvement and presence. We don't often.
We don't do it enough. No. My partner and I have a rule: no phones at the dinner table. We always have, with dinner, phones go away for half an hour. We talk, we catch up on the day, find out what our difficulties have been, plan whatever it might be, but no phones at the dinner table. Again, it's that focus of spending time on each other and devoting the time properly.
Beautiful.
I want to come briefly onto the app, if that's okay. I just, because you say you have played with it. I was wondering if there's anything that you've taken from it.
Yeah, so I think we touched on it earlier. It's the whole concept of actually, like, when you go through the process and then the app is able to measure things for you, isn't it? And actually, like, then gives you something tangible is the word. I feel like it's relevant to look at and see. And you're not judging yourself, but you've just measured, and perhaps you've given yourself some insight as to where perhaps you could look to use your energy in other areas, or where perhaps there are gaps for you to focus more energy on. That measurable stuff is really important, because if we can't measure something, it's why I think we're very good in this world of living a life that presents well, but we're not so good at living a life that feels good on the inside, because no one can measure our own happiness, but everyone can measure what they see of us, what our car is, what our house is. So we're focusing on that because it's measurable. And we won't focus in on actually what's inside of us and what's more important. And so this is kind of bringing our inner world into a measurable state from what I've seen in many ways. I know it's got all aspects, but that's what particularly kind of stood out for me.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I always ask a set bunch of questions to all of my guests. Before that, is there anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about? How do people get in touch? All of that stuff.
Yeah, it's been a big transitional period for me. This COVID, like, I've tried to take a lot of my world online, so I'm working on a lot of that, and there's some really cool things coming soon. But probably right now, I'm bringing an online mentorship program out in September to take people on this journey, really, like so much of what we've just spoken about, to learn all of that stuff. So that's really exciting for me, because I feel like I want to share that with people and take people on that journey. It's the journey I went on. So that's coming out in September. I run a platform called Heart Space, which I'm transitioning at the moment, but ultimately it's just providing a safe space to be who they truly are, to dive into that aspect of themselves, because we don't necessarily have that space in society, as we've kind of discussed. So like-minded people, open hearts, fully be who you are. So that's transitioning as well. So that's going to come. A new version of that's coming in September, which is really exciting too. And yeah, otherwise everything's really done on Instagram. You know, it's it rules the world now, doesn't it? If anything's going on, it's on Instagram, I guess.
It's got, there's positives and negatives to
absolutely
to social media, but it's done in the right way. It's a very powerful platform.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll set questions. Is there anything that you do on a regular basis that is an absolute non-negotiable that helps improve your mindset or your mood?
Trying to just answer intuitively, and if there might be a better answer to this. But every day I have a bit of a morning process, really short one. I'm not going to go into all of it, but like I have a shower and I have a cold shower at the end, and I do some exercises around that, which is for me, personal to me, which is about stimulating sexual energy without sounding too creepy, and it doesn't go so far, too far, but it's just stimulating, awakening my sexual senses, and cold water is using that as a stimulant to actually make some progress with my day. It's like I'm overcoming a challenge straight away. My mind is saying, no, avoid this cold water, and I'm saying, screw you, fearful mind, I'm going to do it anyway, and showing it who's boss. So that's my intention. And when I come out of the shower, I just go into a sort of an introspective process of just then asking myself, or I connect with my heart fundamentally, and I ask my heart what it needs. Because I think we're very, that for me is the being part. So we're very good at, writing to-do lists of all stuff to do. So I just ask my heart every morning in some capacity, what is it you need? What is it my heart is craving today? And that's just asking, like, basically my deepest values. What are my deepest values seeking, and where are they right now? How can I show up for them? And that kind of is my day. Like, and off we go from there. But I feel like I've had an element of connection, and I guess both doing and being in that sense. Like the cold shower, I'm taking action, and then a bit of being and asking my heart what it needs. Lovely.
And what makes you good at what you do?
Truth, I think, just a truth. That's my goal always, just to show up with my truth.
Perfect. What would you say to a young Ben?
Intuitively right now, just enjoy the journey, trust, and show up for your heart.
Lovely. And lastly, anything, it could be anything, person, place, book, that you've taken inspiration from recently.
Inside Heart Space, my online community, we've got a book club at the moment. It's Brené Brown, Daring Greatly. That book is based on the quote that's become known as the man in the arena, which is a talk by Roosevelt. And the book, the quote, the whole aspect of daring greatly, just basically showing up for me. It's showing up, and like, not because you're good at it or because you think you can succeed in it, but because it matters to you. And that's my principle, really. And yeah, Brené Brown really has been a massive guide to me.
Incredible. I'm gonna wrap things up. That has been just a phenomenal hour, Ben. I want to thank you so much. The quote that you've just said, that man in the arena, I feel like we're all the man in the arena, and actually we need to move away from that need to conform. You've talked so eloquently and beautifully about opening your heart, listening to your heart, connecting to your heart, finding your true self. And again, I loved your analogy of half watching your own film. Actually, we need to properly invest in ourselves and spend the time focusing on ourselves and finding what fulfills us, rather than just traveling down this blinkered path of society. So I want to thank you so much for your openness, your honesty, your emotional vulnerability. I'm sure people will take a huge amount from this. So thank you.
Well, thank you, brother. Thank you for holding the space. It's beautiful to sit here with you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to this episode of Life Happens. I hope you'll agree that Ben is a pretty astonishing human being, and I loved making that important distinction as opposed to a human doing. It's rare, as we discussed, to make a connection like that with another person and really get into the aspects of mental health that we can often find awkward and difficult to approach or be open about. But more importantly, it's probably even more rare that we make that connection with ourselves, which Ben spoke about with such passion. That ability to connect with our hearts, to flow, and to simply be. The more we can learn to do that, to go on our own journey of discovery, the more we will begin to understand who we truly are. I took a huge amount from my conversation with Ben, and I hope you did too, particularly the need to invest in ourselves and spend more time focusing on what really matters. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate it and share it. It helps us hugely with our mission to help people build mental fitness, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of Life Happens.